Okay, this is Mr. Willis Grieger, and I'm Dan Grandfield, and we're talking about how the World's Fair houses were moved. Mr. Grieger, you were about 20 years old at the time the buildings were?
25, about 25.
25?
I was born 1910.
1910, okay, and your father was involved with this side of the move of the houses.
Not the moving part, but he was involved in the landscaping. He hauled the black dirt, clay and black dirt, and he dug with horses. There's pictures here where he has a team of horses and a neighbor's horse. They dug the holes for the foundations or basements, whatever they had, and then you have it explained, I know pretty well how that they were moved. And they moved the houses over these holes and built the foundations, and then he had to bring the sand back. And
the way that I understand the houses were moved is the fair closed Halloween of '34,
yeah,
and Robert Bartlett bought these buildings from the fair, and the first one to come over was the Florida Tropical House.
yeah.
They put it on a barge, and the thing that I don't understand is that I want to clear up. There was a pier that was built.
Right, I see that. Go ahead.
The pier was built, and the barge pulled up to the end of the pier.
That's the way. I didn't see this. See, but that would be the practical way it would have to be done because the houses were long.
Yeah, and then they would have to put a dead man on the beach with a pulley.
To pull them off.
Yeah, or they could hook them directly to a track.
Well, let's see. I don't know just where to start. I saw the Rothstone house come across because I had a job working for the Porter County Highway Department. We maintained the 11 miles of concrete road before it was a town. So I was working for the Highway Department. The sand blew in just like snow. And we had I had a snow plow, and I would plow this sand off. And so I was working there, and I looked over towards the Chicago area, and I saw something coming. It looked like a flatboat or barge. Oh yeah, barge. That wasn't unusual to see barges going around the steel mills up that way. And as the time passed, while I was working there, I was getting closer, and finally got close enough that I could see doors and windows. And I thought, well, I'll be darned. Then I suppose we was hearing about the World's Fairs coming over, but we didn't have news like you have now. Now you watch the television, you see them loaded on a barge over there, and you drive over here and see it unloaded. See, we don't know those things. We just hear about it. So, I'll be darned. That's one of the homes coming from the fair, and it came up close enough that I could see it was a house, and then I suppose my time was out. I was done plowing in that area, and I left. Then I heard shortly after that they tried to bring it in, and by the dock, and the wind was so strong it kept blowing it around, and they couldn't land it. This is what we heard, and they took it to Michigan City in the harbor, in the basin there someplace, and waited till the weather quieted down. That's what we heard about that. That's as much as I've seen of it, but I seen the pier being built and how they did this, and I didn't see them pulling them. I only seen them jacking one of the homes that was the Lustron or the House of Tomorrow, and they jacked them up so they could move them. I could explain how I seen that, whatever you're interested in.
Yeah, that's what I'm interested in.
Okay. Let's see.
The way I understand it is they rolled the houses on the beach on a rolling surface with wood rollers, and then when they got them in place in front of the foundation, they would jack them up slowly. They'd use screw jacks and jack them up, put cribbing underneath them, then jack them up again, more cribbing. When they got to a certain level, they just rolled it across
That's just right.
onto the next one.
And this is something I was familiar with seeing houses being moved because that two-story house over here was on Highway 20. When I went through it had to be moved. So I seen it from the first hole in the wall to put the timbers in, to the cribbing as you call it. Raise them up high enough so men could work underneath it and move it over on rollers. I was familiar with that. It's 4 to 6 feet, but I would have no idea and think of it yet to see that one on the beach. See, they came along on the beach first. Then, as you say, they jacked it up with screw jacks, got it level as the road. Then they must have, I didn't see all this because I wasn't working there every day. Then they would pull them over on the road. And then when they cut to the road, then if we go and see that, you've seen the buildings, they're 20 feet higher than the road. Just a guess, 20 feet. Now in order to move them over there, those 50 feet or whatever it was from the road to where they're sitting, they had to get them at, maybe 2, 3, or 4 feet higher than where they're sitting now. See, so that the men could work underneath them.
Build the foundation.
Yes, so they had to build those cribs up 20 feet, and it makes me shiver yet to think of all those men working under that house on those cribs, 20 feet up above them, and then they have to get in there and pull with these tractors and winches and pull it over. So I didn't see this, but I saw it sitting on the road and sitting on 20-foot cribs.
Did they use pulleys to get leverage?
See, I didn't see all that, but I think in those days they used what you would say block and tackles. Block and tackle is a series of pulleys. You start off with one, you go around and around, and every time you go around it gives it more strength. So as I understand, what they would have done is they dig a post in the sand way down deep, and then they would hook this to it, and the tractor would pull on this block and tackle, and that would pull it real slow and strong, and they could move it. And I suppose they had to just keep, it seemed like a contract you couldn't hardly believe. Then when they got it up there, they had to have something like that way up there to pull it again.
Where was the pier located? Was it located just east of the Florida Tropical House?
No, near the Florida Tropical House, and it might have been a little bit between that and the Rawstone.
Oh, okay, so they brought them up between.
They might have seen, the pier was there. I've seen that pier for many years, and it's just stayed there until the icebergs destroyed it. All but a few posts were left in there. And I think they took those all out because I was concerned about them too. I thought, man, as they were, I knew those stubs were in there, and then see these boats zipping along. See, and then I heard afterwards that they took them out for safety.
I heard that too.
The pier was built out there, well, I'd say 100 or 150, 200 feet. I saw that.
When they jack the houses, did they do it in steps? They jack it up to a certain level and they roll it onto another one and then jack it up and then move it over?
Well, I couldn't tell you because I didn't see that.
Okay.
I saw the Rawstone coming over the water, and then it went away. They just heard that, and then they brought it back. But I saw the pier there, and I realized that they had to sink the barge, because if they didn't sink the barge would be flexible. See, and they had to have something solid, and I understood they knew how deep they wanted the water along the pier, especially at the end, if that's the way they came in. I didn't see them unload them, but then they would jack them up high enough and lay these planks for these rollers.
2 planks or 3 or 4 planks.
They laid it. They had to see, first was the roll piling, and then they had what they call heavy timbers over it, and then plank, and then these rollers would be in between, and they would just roll. And I've seen that done a little, how they do that. The rollers, in my opinion, would have been about 6-inch wooden rollers, and possibly 3-4 feet long. And do you know how they could steer them and how they could do that?
They had to change the point where the block and tackle was in stages.
Well, I've helped a little with some of this with small things. We're using an iron piece of pipe, 4-inch pipe or something, and move something around on the farm, and I knew how to do it. These rollers, you lay them there, and if you lay them straight crossways, they'll go straight. But if you want to turn it, you take a sledgehammer and hit them, and you knock them around on a slant like that. See, and then the other would knock his around, and if they want to turn, they knock this one this way. And then as you pull it ahead, that's the way they could steer them.
And
And how they did it, I don't know, but that's the way we did it out here, and I'm sure that when they said they used rollers to do it, that's the way they would do it.
But they used horses to dig the foundations?
Yeah, that's that picture with my father's horses,
Did they use a bulldozer to move the houses?
and now all they might have had, I think, I've seen this tractor for years. There weren't very many, hardly any bulldozers around in those days.
Was it like a,
Now out here, maybe they had them in Chicago someplace, but they didn't have many out here. Bartlett had a small Caterpillar tractor, and it would be considered now a real small one. And they used that for the mowing, they had thousands of acres, and they pulled a mower and back and mowed that, and they used that tractor. That's where I seen it used. It didn't have a blade on it. It couldn't do anything but pull or something. But, the block and tackle would make the strength.
I heard it was around 22 horsepower.
I couldn't tell you by horsepower what it would be. They rate horsepower so big you know,
Yeah, they were in different ways.
you hear it on TV now about the automobiles they're selling. They're using all that horsepower stuff. You know, here's 180 horsepower, and here's something else. You know, and I wasn't just familiar with that, but I was familiar with it enough to look at a piece of machinery, see it sitting there, and if it weighed 5 tons and it had track on it, I would know about how much power it had.
But this machine didn't have track on it, did it?
Steel track.
It did?
Yeah, real like a Caterpillar tractor. Yeah.
But no blade on the front.
No blade. No. See, as far as the blades, I was familiar with that because my work started in 1929 on road work. And I worked for my father. He had the district between number 6 and the Lake and Chester and Porter and the line, county line, LaPorte County line, and so I knew what kind of equipment they had, and in those years, 1929 and 30, this was in 35. This was, 29 is when I started, but in 35 is when they was moving those homes, 34, 1935. See, so I knew what kind of equipment we had, and at that time, even the county highway department over the whole county didn't have one bulldozer. And I even built a blade on one in 1940 something. I have pictures of it that I built on a Caterpillar tractor that weighed about 10 tons. I knew what they could push, but we didn't talk much about what the horsepower was. We just knew what it would do.
Okay. Now, once they got the building over the foundation, it was higher than the foundation where it was going to be sitting.
Right.
And then the masons filled in the blocks, and they pulled the cribbing out. The building was set down on a certain amount of blocks. That the whole foundation wasn't finished.
No, you know it.
And then they moved the cribbing out and plugged the holes back up.
You know it just as I seen it done. They moved that house, and I knew how they did it. And the reason it might be known, maybe I read it in one of your articles where they put the foundations in.
Right.
Then you have the walls, but the foundations are wide, and it wouldn't make any difference if they missed it a few inches or a foot, because it's all buried. But the foundation,
The footings.
that comes up, the footing, it didn't make any difference, just so they got them about right, see, in my opinion, anyway. Then, when they put the walls in, the reason they done that, they moved the house over first, and then they would drop a chalk line down from the corner, and that's where they'd start. And then when they come up, whatever shape the house was, those walls fit it then. And if they should build those ahead before the house was in there, they might miss it some, and you don't want that around up here. So I know why they done that. It was easy to, any shaped house, they just built the wall to fit.
Willis, the Florida Tropical House, as I understand, was built on a concrete slab at the fairgrounds. And then yet the basement foundation was installed for it. It currently sits on a basement. What happened to that concrete slab? Do you have any idea?
No, I didn't know.
Did they remove it from the slab, or did they pick the house up from the fair with the slab and bring it
Slab and
over?
all? I couldn't answer that for
Okay.
$1 million. I don't know that. because I wasn't there to see them do that. You see, I had this highway job, and I happened to be there the day the raw stone came. If it came before or after either one of the other ones, I wouldn't have known that, but I guess I would have seen the other one sitting there and then see this one coming across, so I don't know, just, I think it's understood that the Florida house came first. I couldn't tell that. But the ones on the slab, see, the Florida house would have been on the slab. They didn't have to protect anything against frost in Florida, because up here you have the frost to contend with. You got to get a foundation unless you want your house moving around. And as I understand it, Florida never freezes down there, so they pour a slab down and build something on it, stays there.
I think that's right. How about the Old North Church? I remember a story that the steeple caught on fire, and then the fire department put it out.
Well, that would be, to me, also that would have to be hearsay. You say you heard it.
Right.
See, and I heard that the steeple was damaged and it was swaying and it wasn't stable, and they had to get it down because it wasn't safe. So we come along there, and maybe sometime afterwards we look, oh, the steeple's gone. They shortened it up and put that in. So whether it was lightning or fire, whatever it was, something damaged it. Yeah.
So there were 4 houses moved by barge.
Let's see.
The Florida, the Rowstone, Armco Farrell house. I think you call it the Lustron house, and then
Yeah, Lester did it, but they call it Armco Ferris, I think that was.
and then
the
the
other
house
one
at
was
Tomorrow.
House at Tomorrow.
And the Old North Church.
Mostly glass.
The North Church came by barge too.
And
Bars.
yes,
No,
it-
not the North Church.
Well, I understand it did. In
North
fact,
Church
they
is-
lost half of the church on a barge that sank. The rear half of the,
That's something to me now. I like to hear
I
that.
don't
didn't
know,
that.
that's the story I heard.
So I think I was around it and seen
See,
some
the
of
Old
these
North
things.
Church was too large to send in prefabricated sections on a truck,
Yeah,
as the colonial houses were, you know, the colonial village home.
yeah, I know that.
So, I know that's the story that I understand.
I know most of the colonial village was moved by truck.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
And there was another house called the Country Home,
yes.
and those are all gone now except for the North Church.
Do you know where those were located, the country farm home, and to be on a street
Yes,
over
we
there
have
and say-
those on a map.
What?
I have those on a map.
You have?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I know where they were because my father hauled many, many loads of dirt. You can imagine how much dirt it would take to haul in that big place to make it a model farm. That was just in that swamp ground, you know, like the rest of it is around there, the low ground. So they had to build that up to make a farm site, and you can imagine how many hundreds of loads it would have taken to build that up and then plant fruit trees and all this like a little farm in the buildings. And I know right where that one was. It was just, then the governor's mansion. You're familiar with all those. And let's see, what's the other one? George Washington,
Mount Vernon?
Mount Vernon. And I seen those all as they was building them up, putting them together, and come by the next month or so, and they'd be sitting there all painted up and look nice, and flags and everything in streets in front of it. And I knew where they, let's see, these are names. See, if they're wrong, you tell me, because I just is, maybe we use different words out here in the country than you do in books and that, because there was let's see, the Paul Revere, the Ben Franklin, and the House of Seven Gables. And I knew right where, I seen them all out there. They're all gone now. But I know the street right where they're at. I can point out and say that's where the House of Seven Gables was, and this was Ben Franklin, Paul Revere. And so I just grew up around that, see them up and until they burnt down or whatever happened to them.
Yeah, most of them went to disrepair, and they
Yeah.
were destroyed.
You know.
In fact,
See, you know that, and
yeah,
things in the article that you had here, it was interesting for me to read that and say I'd have memory. I maybe told Myrtle about that as she wasn't out here. No, she didn't get here till 42 or something when we got married, 40. And then she would hear me tell about the World's Fair homes and what went on, this and that, and my father worked on them. And I hauled enough black dirt and clay. I didn't do it myself, as I told you. I had two fellows doing it for me because I had a job on the highway department. And that was in the hard times, right after the Depression. And in order to get a job, Bartlett took 15% of our wages in property. So I took this contract with them to agree to have 15% taken out, and I worked long enough to earn 2 lots in Beverly Shores. Because I didn't own any land when I was young, see, but my father had land. He had plenty of land here. He didn't want any lots in Beverly Shores, so whatever arrangement he made with them was, they didn't have that agreement with it.
Did you sell your 2 lots?
Yeah, I'll sell them. I'll say this, you could call it a sale, but the park took them in and paid us.
Okay.
Well,
through condemnation.
what?
Through condemnation.